Welcome to Dasmo and Hunt. I'm Jacir Ruth for Information Week. And in this episode, we are taking a look at whether or not a cloud computing reset needs to happen. Looking at things such as the rising costs, data center shortages, the attention shift for many resources towards AI. Have these and other elements changed the expectations and the ROI for the cloud? And does it make sense for this to be a time to rethink how cloud is budgeted, used, and what the expectations are? So for this episode, I'm joined by Tatum Tummins, Senior Product Manager for Kion, Edward Walsh, Senior Managing Consultant for IBM's Global Cloud Advisory Practice, Jason Hardy, Vice President and CTO of AI at Hitachi Vantara, Joe Jacir, did I get it right this time? Cloud Architect for enVista.
Yep.
Stephen Manley, CTO for Druva, and David Driggers, CTO for Cirrascale. All of you, thank you so much for being available today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Stephen, let's get this rolling. Has a conversation changed in the C-suite in regards to the cloud? Do companies expect to just pay more for the cloud versus operating on-prem? Or are they shrinking cloud budgets to accommodate AI demand that seems to also be coming up?
I think it splits, it's bifurcated. So there are a set of companies that already know exactly what they want to do with AI, whether it's generative AI or traditional AI. And they're looking to run infrastructure 24/7. And for those companies, and because a lot of their data is still on premises, we're seeing a big AI investment there. And that's great. But then there's the vast majority of companies, let's say outside sort of the Fortune 50 or the AI expert type of companies that are still figuring things out. And what we're seeing is they're actually doubling down on cloud because it gives them that sort of easy on-road. I go into Bedrock, or I go into some of the in Amazon or some of the tools in Azure or in Google. And I don't need that expertise of how to set up an infrastructure. I don't need the expertise in terms of managing all of the AI tooling. It sort of comes pre-built for me, so I can figure out where the business value is. And so this is so we're seeing that discussion in cloud and being, no, I want to do more in cloud because it's the only place that I can really experiment safely with AI. But I will say they are certainly watching the expenditure because it can be very easy to overspend on AI in the cloud if you're not watching. And so we are seeing a new layer of people trying to watch and manage the security as well as the cost that they're spending in cloud. But we're seeing more in cloud because people are trying to figure out what to do with AI.
Gotcha. Appreciate your thoughts on that, and definitely probably be circling back to the AI topic for sure. It's part of the equation. Joe, do the older, or let's say the earlier selling points for the cloud still hold up these days?
Absolutely. I think the short answer is most definitely yes. I think the longer answer is, depends on what you're trying to do. I think if you look at large scale companies like Netflix, they are the poster child for success in the cloud. I think there are other large companies, though, that have tested the limits. You look at a company like Dropbox, who had a very public exit from the public cloud. They found there were storage limits for them, and they found that they could actually do better with their own storage. And they pulled their software back and redesigned it to take advantage. And so I think definitely, you need to be mindful of where you are in the journey of your company. Do you have a cohesive vision of what you're trying to accomplish? If you do, it's easy to take advantage of the cloud, but there are also other ways you can take advantage of having your own data center as well. And I think understanding the fit of your staff, your vision, what you're trying to accomplish, what avenues of cloud can you take advantage of? Are you just consuming software off the shelf? If that's the case, then you're probably better off just using a SaaS model in consuming the cloud that way. But there's definitely a different answer for every company. And I think, but I think as far as the old selling points go, absolutely, cloud delivers.
Gotcha. All right. Appreciate your thoughts on that. David, does a hybrid cloud approach, mixing cloud and on-prem, make more sense now in the face of what we're seeing potentially in the narrowing of cloud capacity?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily tied to capacity. I would say it's tied to how the usage is and what the platforms are. So we're an AI cloud provider. It's what we really focus on. And what's happened, this type of equipment is typically an always on, and it's also HPC. So it's very difficult to do on-prem, and it's very difficult to do in a traditional cloud provider. So you've seen this rise of this new type of cloud provider. A lot of people are coining as neoclouds, CoreWeave, Lambda, Cirrascale, as well as Vultr and a host of others. And we complement the traditional cloud providers as well as on-prem. We're in that middle zone where it doesn't fit on-prem and it doesn't fit in the cloud. But what that means is you're gonna have a hybrid scenario or even a multi-cloud. So if your data plane or your control plane, if you've committed to cloud, you're probably still going to connect to one of us. And if you're trying to do on-prem because you don't fit in the traditional cloud, then we'll wind up doing a hybrid that way. So hybrid or multi, absolutely. And part of it is hard to find data center that can handle these types of platforms. It's densities that are unheard of on-prem. It's densities, 52 kilowatts of rack is normal. And now NVIDIA is trying to push that to 140 kilowatts in one rack, all water cooled. The hyperscalers don't have it, and neither do the on-prems. So you're going to be hybrid or multi if you want to be in the cutting edge of AI cloud right now.
Gotcha. All right, appreciate your thoughts on that. Tatum, some naysayers, and they've definitely hit me up on this. Some naysayers have been adamant in the past, at least in the past, about the cost of cloud just kind of making everything more expensive. Were they right in the end?
Yeah, so I think it was Joe that was just giving a great example of like two companies, right, where they have a different need, right? Cloud suited them differently, and for one of them, like with Dropbox, right, maybe cloud wasn't the right solution. Ultimately, I would say it depends, but I'd say it's looking at the problem wrong, right? The promise of the cloud wasn't always just to be more cost efficient. It was about value. It was transforming your business, testing the market. Something doesn't work, you restart, you try again, making that product life cycle more valuable, right, to your customers and to your business. And when you think about it that way, right, cost is not necessarily the way to value, like, was this the right investment for us, right? It's about, did we grow our business? Did we transform, our revenue model? Those are the things, those are the questions, right, we should be asking. And I think for overwhelming majority of companies, right, that's held true, right? And so I do think we have a long way to go in terms of like how we think about cloud costs, right? As someone who, I basically spent my whole professional career well before FinOps was ever a term that people talked about. That's kind of what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And, we have a gap in terms of governance and how we write policy and things around spend and like what we expect and shift left and kind of the conversation when we're thinking about cloud. But ultimately, cloud's still valuable. And so I would say the naysayers are right sometimes, but mostly wrong.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. And definitely some of the naysayers, haven't heard them in a while, but they definitely said, stop talking about cloud. I want to talk about on-prem and talk about COBOL coding. Jason, will AI devour the critical capacity needed that makes cloud viable and worthwhile? Is there a potential tipping point, if there is that kind of a shift where cloud loses its mojo, if you will, if AI gobbles up the capacity at data centers?
Yeah, I mean, David brought up a really good point. How it actually looks like from a consumption point for this stuff. So we have innovations like liquid cooling. We have innovations even like bringing in micronuclear and SMR and other capabilities like that. But at the end of the day, really the density problem comes with how much power we can deliver to a data center. And that's very limited right now. I mean, there's a reason why Microsoft and Google and Facebook are looking at also becoming nuclear power operators. It's driving that demand. So there is going to be a tipping point where if the energy grid cannot keep up with the physics power demand of these processing systems, then it's going to have to be more distributed. It's going to have to be in different markets. And ultimately it's going to be like, well, you just can't power in another thing. So what's really happening here is an efficiency discussion. It's how we can better power, better process, but also improve on the overall efficiency of how we consume these technologies, and ultimately how much power they actually draw. And that's really interesting from the perspective of, as Hitachi goes beyond just saying, hey, it's not just an IT problem, it's an infrastructure problem, and we have a point of view from we deliver high voltage power. We're a big power provider from that standpoint. So we're looking at it from the lens of not just how we make the IT infrastructure more efficient, but also what it means from the OT side of things, and how to better consume that. So yes, there will be a tipping point, and the race right now is to how to do this more efficiently, not just directly on the chip or the GPU, but also the peripheral of the GPU, everything that supports it, even to the code you write, to do this in a much more efficient manner so that we don't hit that out of capacity problem that ultimately will stifle innovation. And it's not just a cloud problem, it's an on-prem problem, it's a global enterprise problem, from just being able to power and keep the AI and Gen AI train moving forward.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And for our audience, just if you haven't seen, Information Week just did a recent series called The Cost of AI, where we featured multiple stories, including covering the power grid issues, which I covered myself. So, okay. All right, Ed, how do the early promises of the cloud compare with what is currently available? Did cloud really deliver that ROI that organizations sought, or were those benefits still long in coming and further down the road?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are seeing a lot of organizations really struggle to realize the value of cloud, but that is to say that that value is not still real and very possible as it was promised 5, 6 years ago. But I think varying approaches of cloud adoption has led to very various outcomes. And so actually, IBM just recently conducted a survey over, I think, 700 executives across the world. And we found that 1 in 4 clients actually reported positive ROI from their cloud adoption programs. So it really is a fair question to ask, is cloud ROI real? But we have found that those failures to achieve ROI really often stem from organic growth, slow talent maturity, lack of process changes, and really a rapidly changing business and technology landscape. And so this fragmentation in turn has caused increased cloud costs, complexity to manage, and technology debt. And so we've really characterized this behavior as hybrid by default, which is adopting technology in cloud and pockets that hinder that innovation, scale, and growth, and ultimately impacting ROI negatively. But that being said, I think that cloud can still deliver the ROI originally promised, not in the distant future, but like pretty rapidly. There were a select group of companies that were successful in maximizing their ROI through cloud adoption, the 1 in 4 clients I just talked about in that survey. And so in order to help to replicate the successes of those organizations, we've started to codify a framework in order to help those other clients. And we've really coined this new approach as hybrid cloud by design, which really emphasizes the cloud adoption that is more, let's say, business-centric. It's more holistic and value-oriented. And value-oriented to maximize ROI is very important to someone who just mentioned on the call. It's not just about, it's about measuring the right things, not necessarily just cost savings, but business value, right? Opening the aperture on the value that you're investing in. And so I think we view this time now as not only as a time to reconsider your cloud strategy to improve ROI, but we really view that it's critical in order to stay ahead of this technology revolution that's happening. Because we do see an inflection point in the market with the emergence of generative AI, the resurgence of importance around AI. We view that finally settling down that foundation of your cloud and hybrid infrastructure is really necessary to adopt and to scale AI to get that competitive edge, and then ultimately the ROI on all your technology investments.
Well, also traditional cloud originally was really good for research and experimentation because your access fit what it was designed for, was elasticity. So you could go and do research, pull it back in, go and do experiments, come back internal. And so with AI, cloud really fits AI research and development and experimentation extremely good, because this equipment is very, very expensive. So you don't want to buy it and let it sit in the corner. So I think there's that resurgence of what cloud was really good at in the beginning is happening right now with AI again. The harder part comes when you go to deploy. if we're trying to deploy, an AI model, and that application has to follow the sun, well, that's really not good for on-prem. But again, it's kind of good for cloud. But again, it takes much more management to move that app as the sun moves. So we do have some challenges with AI deployment as it relates to cloud. For AI research and experimentation, the cloud is fantastic. It's way cheaper than trying to do it on-prem.
We found, I'll say, we released a couple of AI products fairly rapidly. And to your point, we could not have done it if we had not been able to experiment rapidly in the cloud. If I'd had to wait 3 months to get the equipment in the data center, set up the equipment, build everything from scratch, we would have been behind the competition instead of ahead. So I'm with you on that. Now, I will say that in the cloud, because there are so many regions, if you design the AI app on top of the infrastructure in the cloud, well, you can even solve that follow the sun problem. But to your point, you've got to architect for it. You can't just you don't roll out of bed and have a globally distributed application by accident.
Traditional cloud is not set up right now for deploying these models. If you're a multi-regional company, especially if you're a global, you've got a real challenge in. Ideally, the neo clouds will try to solve that. I know we're going to try to solve it. So, but I can't say much about it yet.
It is funny.
I think we also need.
Go ahead.
I think we also can't forget, though, the fact that, like, for these AI platforms to be successful, there's a certain amount of mass that comes with it from a data perspective. So having processing in the cloud obviously solves a big part of the problem, but you're still, like, from an enterprise perspective, being able to integrate in, you kid about the COBOL environments, but yes, there is mainframe platforms and there's these traditional IT platforms, and a lot of customers exist in a hybrid ecosystem that is multi-cloud, to where the data necessary to power these outcomes still drives a tremendous amount of, like, how are we going to do this? There's not a good answer right now. It's a lot of bits being moved around across a multitude of different platforms. But at the end of the day, we still, like, customers still need to plan for, if this thing needs to be viable, if this thing especially has to have a real-time point of view, there is a tremendous amount of mass that comes with doing that, and in the form of data to be able to support and power these outcomes.
It's funny, every time we talk about scaling AI, the conversation of cloud comes up and the advantages. But we also see on the flip side that also AI is actually helping to accelerate cloud adoption and to manage it more effectively. So we see this, like, symbiotic relationship between AI and cloud, where AI can benefit from hybrid capabilities and cloud capabilities, but also AI can effectively help to accelerate and de-risk, right, transformation to cloud, help to optimize on cloud. And so the kind of this balancing act between the two, they'll kind of start to fuel together to kind of accelerate some of the digital transformation I know we're seeing from our clients.
And I think one of the things you see is the companies that are doing well at using AI in the cloud are the ones who have already started to go through the digital transformation. To Jason's point, already have a significant amount of data in the cloud. And for us, most importantly, have thought about the data security, because and we haven't talked about that aspect of it, but every customer I know is paranoid about, when I put my data into a model, what does that mean? Who's got access to it? Is it my model? Is it a general model? And those companies that have set up good data security practices are able to hit the AI ground running a lot faster than those who are sort of going, well, I got a bunch of data around here. Let's see what happens. You need to have a plan before you go into this stuff.
Absolutely. And as we see regulation start to also impact a lot of this, government is going to start to play a big role in how we can actually operate in this kind of new ecosystem. Sovereign AI is becoming a very popular topic. And if we look at even the likes of Australia or the likes of New Zealand, or even into the Middle East and things like that, they're starting to pull out and not use global cloud presences, and instead are opting for these neo clouds, to label it, of hey, we can guarantee sovereignty of this, and now it becomes more a closer guarded national asset than it does is just stick it out there and hope for the best. So security is a huge part of it, and the regulation that's going to come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. From a global perspective, the US is easy because it's a really big region that, there's a lot going on. Europe is fairly easy because of GDPR. But when you're talking Southeast Asia, every little country is its own fiefdom, and they've all moved very quickly to basically nationalize the ownership of the data. So any data that's happening, they want it in country, kept in country. If it's PI information, financial information, they want it kept in country. So it's going to be a bit more challenging when it comes to global deployments of AI models, because you're going to have in-country, data security.
Let me throw this in real quick. And this is kind of really summing up what you're all just been saying. Should the conversation with cloud, not necessarily marketing, because I'm not here to talk about marketing, but should the conversation about the nature of cloud start to be more inclusive of saying, inclusive of what you're discussing about its role with AI, make that really present so that it's for one, it's not kind of like left in the background, but really try to show how it's intrinsic, or how it can be intrinsic to what's been going with everything that you all have been saying, and more elements. Should that really be kind of like the going conversation, discussions of cloud, within organizations and how they want to implement cloud, and kind of like maybe not absolutely marry it to their AI strategy, but definitely make it clear what the relations are.
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, cloud started with servers and then started adding in workstations and then edge, and I think the AI part of it is just the kind of the extension of cloud 3.0, 4.0, whatever we want to call it again. But cloud the only way we're going to have globally distributed AI is via cloud.
I think the other part in it to extend on, like you said, it started with, in some ways I view cloud, started with servers and some basic storage, and then you saw the cloud providers start to add IaaS, RDS or Azure, SQL, sort of database layers. The ability for cloud to now add that AI infrastructure layer has been huge, right? And so right now there's a lot of organizations that are looking at AI, and they say AI is either ChatGPT, DeepSeek, sort of pre-built, pre-bundled, or it's something that's built into a variety of my SaaS products. But I'm not ready to even think about us building AI or Gen AI ourselves. But you look at it and you say, it's not that far off. If you can start to think about, you build on a Llama model, which you don't have to create and you don't have to fund, and you can just take a time slice out of it, you can really see people start to accelerate. So I think to your point, when you start and you look at the cloud, you need to be thinking about all the services you want to take advantage of and how that ties into your strategy. Because Jason's right. If the data's not up there, you're not going to have anything to feed into the AI. And if you haven't figured out your application, you're not going to be able to have a globally distributed application. So if this is not fully tied in, yeah, you can do experimentation, but you're not going to get to productization. But if you've got that integrated plan, now you're cooking with gas.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it too is the fact that we're focusing a lot on more of the horizontal side of what AI can do, HR, finance, things like improving on general business practices. As we start to become more verticalized, looking at how we can improve on manufacturing, how we can improve on health and life sciences, that is going to drive this conversation into the edge to where hybrid is going to become very important. I can't rely on my factory to build a widget where it has to go to the cloud and back for every single sensor collection. So there's going to be this, place for everything. The cloud is going to be one piece of it. The data center is going to be another piece of it. And then all the way to the edge at the robot. I mean, even Jensen said it himself, and I agree with him. The natural progression as we were going from agentic to robotics AI is we're going to start to see that physical manifestation of this. And we're already starting to do this. So the point of view will be is like, how do all of these pieces play together? And we're going to be forced to live in a hybrid ecosystem. But how do we best do that and best use not everything is a nail, and I have more than hammers. Mm-hmm. So how do I use what's in my toolkit to be able to properly address the ultimate business outcome of showing an ROI for this and actually improving on the business? And it's more than just saying HR questions.
Yeah, and what most people don't know is that, Jason brought up robotic. Jason himself is actually a robot right now. So
bring up edge. Actually, was going to bring up the last question for us and kind of tie it with another one. expectation that the services are just going to start to continue to cost more for cloud services. Yeah, yay or nay on that. And with that, does edge computing become more attractive in the overall equation for things? Just each of you, your thoughts.
Well, I'll jump in. So I think what we're going to see with AI, in particular with these types of generative AI and these AI assistants that a lot of people are talking about, is we're going to see a fattening of what we call the near edge. So not centralized cloud or true edge. We're going to see near edge compute, so that the devices that we use from our cell phones to our laptops, ideally we're going to get to where Google Glasses and stuff like that become more active and more capable. That's because they're going to be talking to something very close, and they'll be offloading parts of these AI activities. Part of it will be done at the edge, and the next nearest will be done. The rest of it will be done near edge. So not going all the way back to the central, but near edge. So we're going to see a lot of, and that's just spreading of the data center load, being able to not have it in a big central location, but having kind of near edge data centers that are more regionally focused, that handle half of the work that's happening at the edge.
I'll throw in, as Druva, we protect cloud workloads, we protect data center workloads, we also protect edge, like laptops and whatnot. And in the last 6 months, I have seen a resurgence in people needing to protect laptops, PCs, those sorts of things, because again, the AI PC, and I know there's a lot of hype behind it, but there's some reality in terms of what people are doing with this. And Jason's right, there is just so much data out there that you're not going to be able to pump it across a network. And so models getting pushed down so that local system can make better decisions, that is a real thing. And people are starting to ask themselves, what does it mean now? We're back to how do I protect laptops, which we all thought was done, right? It was all Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. It's back because there's so much data and so much to be done on the edge.
I think too, from a cost perspective, it's not just how much does the customer run a GPU, but there's things like token costs. So pushing the stuff to the edge, obviously, it's a lot of people say, well, there's some cost fallacy. It's like, no, it's true. It's like a fixed cost now. It's buy once, cry once. So from that PC side of it, that edge processing side, even in the data center side, there still is listen, I know what my cost is for this up front, and then I'm going to have a refresh cycle and things like that. So again, it's that what plays the right role where. And let's be honest here, most people aren't going to be training their own foundational models. They're going to use whatever is commonly available. So from that standpoint, it's like, okay, how can I now use OpenAI, or do I use something on-prem, or do I tune this down and become more SLM focused at the edge? But at least I know what my cost is across all of those, so that I'm not blowing out my budget ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I mean, I see it with customers every day now. Like, we have folks who are curious, right, of what this means to their business, but there's just a lack of education, just like there would have been a decade ago when people were going to the cloud for the first time on how the economics of it all work. Folks are really struggling with what was supposed to be a fun test case, right, becomes a really big thorn in their side. And so, I mentioned earlier, like, governance and policy. I think we're going to have to really figure out how do you actually govern these things from a security standpoint, but how do you govern the cost, right? How do you put some guardrails around what it can do and how far you're comfortable with it going? So.
Great. All right. Unless there's any other thoughts from the rest of the gang? No? Yes? Yes, no? Okay, great. All right, then listen. David, Joe, Stephen, Jason, Edward, Tatum, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you, Joe.
You can find the DOS Won't Hunt podcast on Podbean, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms.